Hey, everybody, welcome back. Doing something a little different. I've never done this before. I'm having an author come back to talk about the same book because it's been a couple years since then, and we worked together on our launch, and I kind of want to know what happened. So here is the official introduction. What happens after a successful book launch once the book is out in the world and the real work of turning ideas into impact begins? Today's guest is returning to the podcast after launching her first book, Reframing the Leadership Dance, The Secret to Finding Your Rhythm as a People Leader in May 2024. Since our last conversation, which was about a year after it was released, she's continued to build a body of resources around the book, including companion materials, reflection tools, the Empower Your People Leadership Lab, and a leadership mastermind designed to help people apply the ideas to their real life challenges. Her work helps leaders stop blaming the difficult person in front of them and start noticing the conversation patterns they are caught in. Through her company, Authentic Edge, she supports leaders and HR partners who want to make people leadership feel more grounded, practical, and sustainable. I had the privilege of supporting her through her review-focused launch, and I'm excited to continue the conversation 2 years after her book first launched. Say goodbye to doing leadership alone and say hello to my guest, Stacey Larsen. Stacey, welcome. I grabbed that last line from your website because I thought it was so cool. Say goodbye to doing leadership alone. Hello and welcome back.
Hi, Robbie. It's so great to be here.
So you and I have stayed in touch, which is kind of a highlight, is that we have not actually disappeared from each other's lives and just pop it in a year later. And I gotten to witness a little bit of the evolution that you've been on since the book came out. Can you remind us when you first started working on this book, what was the whole goal for it? Like you had a business, who were you serving, and why was the book sort of a piece of the puzzle for how you thought you'd help them?
What a great question. When I started in late 2023, early 24, to think about writing my book, I was looking at my business as a leadership coach and realizing that I had a lot of raving fans, but I wasn't necessarily having a financially growing model of who I was working with and how I get introduced to new clients other than referral. And so when I chose to write the book, it was very specifically with that purpose. It was, how do I connect with, get to know, get who I am out there so that people new to me can have another way to meet me and to know what I do and how I think and what my style is.
Yeah, it's casting a wider net because right before that, the people who were being introduced to you knew somebody you knew,
Exactly.
and that was working. But there's still obviously a limit to that model. So you wanted to both cast a wider net, but I also imagine having a book like this helped those intermediaries have something tangible to pass along. So it strengthened that referral.
Absolutely. I think that was the thing that surprised me so much is once I launched, I learned that I was disappointed at first that I didn't get in the first 6 months like brand new clients to me. I was like, I wrote this, and now I don't have any brand new clients that didn't read my book and magically love me and come and get, services from me. And in reflecting upon it, I realized, oh, wait a minute. I got even more referrals in that first 6 months to a year because of that tangible book that I could put in the hands of the people who cared about what I had to do, had experienced what I had to do, but didn't know exactly how to share it with other people in a concise way.
We got to know each other around the launch process and doing some coaching together for quite a while, actually. The book was written. By the time I met you, the book was written. You were kind of getting down to the details of the formatting and publishing and all that good stuff. And you had a pretty good, like everything you just described to me is what you wanted to have happen. And then I was like, okay, but there's like steps in between.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like you know, I think you're very typical of an author. Like you have a lot of passion, you had a lot of expertise to share, you had a pretty good sense of what you wanted to be doing, like how the book was going to support your work. And it wasn't based on vanity metrics. It wasn't like I want to be a bestseller, I want to sell
Yeah.
a million copies. It wasn't any of those things. It was pretty grounded. But what did you do differently as we were working together? And it felt like it felt almost like because you made one tiny move, then three other moves started to happen. It was like there was like a shuffling of a multiple piece dimension. When you changed one piece of the puzzle, other things sort of clicked in place.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to put it, Robbie. When I met you, I was exhausted and relieved to have finished writing the book. And I'm like, okay, now we're going to launch. And the folks that I was writing it with who were coaching me at the time didn't have much for launching the book other than, yay, we're going to have launch day. And I happened to be on a group call with you, and you started asking me very curious questions like, well, what's your launch actually going to look like? And I'm like, what do you mean? It's just launch day. And the more questions you asked about how I was going to get the message out to people and how I might be able to have a call with people on it pre-launch that would help not just sell books, but connect with people about what my message was. That really intrigued me and helped me figure out, well, who do I want to connect with pre-launch day in order to really set the book up, the book launch up for success.
Yeah, who are those referral partners or people who've experienced your work that would appreciate this for themselves or would know someone to pass it to and not wait to share it with them the day it's published, which is the day, by the way, I believe your launch day was planned for because you had
Yeah.
to, I remember you had to kind of push back and forth with them that you weren't going to do a big deal on that day. And they were like,
Yes.
what do you mean? You're like, no, 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 there's a plan here.
Right. Right. Yeah. It was a very revealing conversation to be able to say, yeah, yeah, I know it launched on the Kindle on Amazon, but we haven't launched yet because I haven't announced it to the world yet.
Yeah,
So we're going to do that in a very purposeful way.
it's
Yeah.
the difference between publication day and launch day, which usually get equated to be the same day, or you might call it like the release date. But in my process, there's like a 2.5, 3 week period of time between the two. And that's the soft launch. That's where you did a great job. You got a lot of people activated, leaving you reviews, getting the word out. And, at the time, we had a goal for reviews and you met that. You got over 50 reviews out of the gate. And now it's closing in on 90, which is fantastic.
Mhm.
Um, but there were some other side benefits because you did choose the right people. Like that's the hardest part of this for the author, I think, is taking the time to be thoughtful about who's on their launch team. What kinds of conversations happened during your launch that then led to, like you said, you had new business coming in over the next 6 to 12 months.
Mhm.
It stemmed back to probably people on that team. Were you able to trace it back?
I don't know that I've traced it back exactly, but I do know that from having the launch calls and have people be able to attend them, there were specific intentional dates and recordings, even if people weren't able
Mhm.
to come live, that people could get excited with me. People could tune in for even a little piece of it and have a concrete leadership tip that they took away or a concrete thing that interested them, that then they had a conversation topic to talk about with someone that they might be on a future call with, and that person was complaining about something with their team, and they said, well, Stacey just wrote this book and she said X, Y, or Z. And there were multiple opportunities for that, both through the calls, the emailing, and asking for reviews, and people were reading the chapters. And then also just the recordings and the postings that I was doing, people had enough connection to what I was doing to have it work naturally into their conversations, which helped a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the activation piece. It's that they were knowledgeable about what you were doing. They knew about this resource, and they knew what keywords should trigger the conversation to like pass your name along, based on having been an active participant in this launch sequence
Yeah.
that is reviews focused, but it's really about waking up and engaging a network. But I want to sort of take us forward a little bit, because since the book's been out in the world, since it's been launched, I'm curious what surprised you most about how readers are engaging with it. Like, did anything show up that you weren't planning for?
I think what surprised me is that they're not all coming the same way through to me. So some come from the book and then into my leadership lab, and then maybe into coaching. And some are coming in from the coaching side and attending the leadership lab and then wanting the book to support it. So it's going both directions. And that to me is fascinating. There are still some people who I work with who they know the concepts in the book, but they've never read per se cover to cover the book.
Right.
And then there's other people who dive into the book and then only touch on one of the 4 steps in my framework with me the whole time we're coaching.
Getting people to read a book is so much harder than getting them to buy it.
Right?
And getting them to take action from what they read, whew, that's the piece there. Because then when they've had that experience, they then get to share that with other people. What have you been hearing though from readers now that it's been out in a while? Is there any pattern to the feedback that you're getting?
Yeah, I think the most delightful thing that I hear is that they hear my voice in the book and it sounds like me. And that just tickles me, because that was the whole idea, is how do I replicate the way I talk, the way I speak, the way I think in metaphor, and engage with people in a book. I actually often have to keep myself from having too high expectations for myself and where the book goes, because I actually think the book was just the beginning of a conversation with people. And I think the more I read what people write in their reviews or interact with people around it, it really is that. They don't come and say, this book was the most amazing Bible for leadership. They come and they say, hey, this thing you said, I'm really interested in talking more about that. What does that really mean? And that's what I wanted, that back and forth, that conversation starter.
This visualization that I have for this is that the book is a brick holding open the door between you and that person, and propping the door open a little wider every time they reach out until there's no barrier. Like, that's what the book is doing. It keeps them coming back and having conversations, different parts of it. That is book as a business development tool. I love that for you. And the conversations you're having have probably shifted as well, because people are more knowledgeable about your content. So they're coming in to ask specific questions as well.
Absolutely. And revisiting it again and again. One of the things that I talk about in my book is I break down the 4 habits or ways we think about leadership and what we have to do as we evolve as leaders. And what has been happening again and again and again is I'll coach someone and they may read the book once at the beginning to get to know how I think and connect with me. And then we'll be referencing maybe something along the way, and then they'll get better as a leader. And then suddenly, wait, we need to go back again and find the next opportunity that's still in those 4 steps somewhere, but it's a different place to play, because now we're elevating the leadership conversation as to what you're ready for now and what's important now. So it's a a big spiral, and we
I,
go through it over and over.
I love that. Yeah, no, it gets people wherever they are and moves them forward, and they can come back and adjust and keep moving forward. I want to go back to this writing piece because you referenced, I know this about you, that you've said people hear your voice like as they're reading your material. And I also know that you have a background in academic writing. You've written a thesis. I struggled with writing my first book for a couple of years because the way I was approaching that writing before I knew any other authors really was kind of more academic. Like, and I hated it. I hated writing academic writing. I wasn't particularly fond of it. And there was this moment when I realized I could write in my own voice, and it was like, what? So one, if you're listening, permission granted. But also that it changed my relationship with the work and my readers' relationship with the work for the better. But the transition for someone who's gone on to write a doctorate, I imagine it's just such a stylistically different. It's almost like left brain, right brain. Like, was there a transition in your brain about how you were going to approach this work in order to get to the point where people heard you, like they read this and they're like, oh my God, that's Stacey. Stacey's in my head.
It's so funny because when I wrote the first draft of the first couple of chapters, I don't think any of that stayed. I think it's all in the trash. And it's because I wrote it with that old mentality in mind, like trying to be perfect, trying to say things with correct grammar and, longer compound sentences and complex sentences and big vocabulary and all the things. Impressing people and trying to take everything that I've done in my work and somehow encapsulate that in certain sentences. I mean, it's daunting, and it becomes so serious and so heavy. And the coach that was working with me originally saw my first draft and threw up her hands and laughed at me.
Oh my.
This is not what you said you wanted to do. This is so not what you said you wanted to do. You're not writing your dissertation, Stacey. Try again. Yeah.
I'm really glad you had that person. I'm curious about how you even move forward with picking somebody to work with, because I mean, I thought I needed, this is going back to like 2015. I thought I needed to write a proposal. Self-publishing did exist. It wasn't as prevalent. And I thought, well, I should still work on a proposal either way because it'll help me answer all these questions. And then I got stuck writing a proposal, which was like a noble obstacle. It wasn't writing a book. And like, oh, well, I have to research like the marketing and like, you know what I mean? Like I didn't have a book. I had nothing planned. But if I didn't move forward until I found the right community people and the right person to kind of help me move forward. And how many, did you have false starts?
I did. I think maybe the way I would put it is I ended up with different people for different phases in the process, where I think when I started, I thought I would have one person. So the person I started with was the person who broke my way I was thinking about it, shattered the mindset that I had to spend a year and a half writing this book. She said, you can do this in 3 months. And I was like, wait a minute. No way. Yes, here's the template. Here's what you can do. And I was intrigued. And the whole idea of writing a book that is an introduction to you, that is not everything that you do, intrigued me, and it made it doable, and it made me able to take that first step and jump into the process. So I needed her at the beginning. I really needed her. Then once I'd gotten through about halfway, there was a person who became my editor who had a different kind of editing style. It wasn't the typical send it in, red pen it, send it back. That didn't work for me because I would write it worse.
That's so funny. But I could
would
also,
be worse every time.
You're like, I'm sorry, is this what you meant? No.
No. So she and I got on calls, And instead of giving me the red pen, she would say, okay, go to this part, talk to me. And once she heard what I was trying to say, she said, okay, now here's your feedback. Do this, do this, do this, go do it and come back. And that worked for me, getting on these calls and working from one call to the next. That auditory piece really, really worked for me. It's like a conversation, which is so funny because that's exactly what my book is.
So funny.
The
It's
dance.
also that there's not one single way to do it, that, you have to find the pieces that work for you.
Right.
I'm so glad that that person accommodated you, and it probably made their job ultimately easier as well to recognize that. I want to
It
bring
was
this back
such
to
a
the
blessing.
business side of things for you, because you did write this with a business focus. And I remember around the time that you and I met, I said something like, wow, like you have so many ingredients, but you don't know what you're cooking. Is that what kind of something like that I said?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
was like, okay, like what is this? And so you had different programs you were running, you had membership things, and they all had different names, and there's this new book that was coming out. And so like this happens to authors. Like the book is probably a great way to get clarity on who you are and what you want to say. You create frameworks. I know that happened for you. You create frameworks. But then it's a mismatch to the rest of the business, and
Totally.
you're exhausted. So most people don't do the work that you did to get all of that aligned. But I think that's part of you were like, oh, I did make new business in the next 6 to 12 months. I think that you created a clear pathway from the book to the work that you were doing. What was that like? What was it like to have that realization? What was it like to, at that point when you were probably still feeling kind of, just tired from
Exactly,
all that
right?
work, to now be like, oh, and now I have to like worry about branding and like aligning my programs and maybe creating something new and deciding what to drop,
Right,
like mental, like CEO, like real CEO
right.
work. Yeah. What was that like?
It was mind-blowing when you connected the dots for me to see that my services did not connect with the book and that it was just like this add-on. And how was that going to help me streamline what I was doing? It wasn't.
Mm,
So it was revelationary, but at the same time, overwhelming until in the next beat, you said to me, well, let's not make this a big deal. Let's just do this. Let's just simplify it. Let's take the things that you're doing already and just tweak them.
mm,
And that really resonated for me because that's what I teach my clients all the time. You don't have to change your complete leadership style. You have to look at what you're missing, where the dance is not flowing, and you have to tweak. And so you helped me, and we went back and forth to, well, what about this?
mhm.
Well, let's try that. And we basically took a course that I had success with for one round, had a whole bunch of different metaphors in it, had a whole different name, but it was very similar in content. And we just redesigned it
Right.
to fit with the book. And I didn't make it perfect. I just launched it and perfected it as we went through the next round. And you taught me all kinds of strategies that I could use as I was going through to grab marketing materials and figure out how to grab live. Um, so far, here's how I'm feeling about this course, which felt different to me than a formal testimonial.
Mhm.
And I love the strategies that you share because they're simple, they're immediately applicable, and it doesn't have to be so big and formal and tasky.
You're an interesting case study for me, because it was before my book came out, Launch Your Book: An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews to Drive Revenue. I didn't have as formal a program for the book launch piece of it. It was based on work I had done with my books and a handful of other people. It wasn't something I was like it wasn't as well structured. It was the very beginning, I think, of when I was starting to take that more seriously. And the coaching part I'd been doing a really long time. It was just sort of like, oh, we could do the coaching, but have the book be sort of the central feature of this. And in some ways, the work that you did was important for you to do, whether or not you had a book. Like the
Mm,
alignment, the customer journey, like understanding their needs and their awareness, and like how do you introduce what you do, even if you didn't have a book. You could have had a
very true.
TEDx talk. You could have been a guest on a podcast and wanted to share that show. I mean, it didn't have to be as big as a book,
Yeah.
but just doing all that work. Most of the clients I've worked with have had to do some of that, and in the first like 3 months before they launch something new. And it's not the thing they sign up for, I will tell you. It's not. It's the thing it was like when I hired a coach. I hired Dory Clark to be my coach, and she said, you got to do a TEDx talk and write for Harvard Business Review. And I was like, why did I hire you? Like, that's a lot of work. It was, I didn't sign up to do that. It wasn't like I sought out that, but that's why we hire coaches. And so the fact that you said not just, okay, Robbie, we're going to work together on the launch, but you were like, let's do a 6-month coaching package and the launch. You were able to really develop the connecting tissue between these two things and smooth out that experience for the customer. You could have had a very strong launch and still had all that back end stuff just not as well lined up, I guess. And I can see why a lot of authors opt to not do that in that moment, because money and time and exhaustion. But you're kind of the case study of how well it works, and in retrospect, it set you up for success.
Absolutely. I would also say it might have something to do with how I learn and who I am, in that I love practical, and I love diving into something that I'm working on with customers and with clients. And so for you to help me with the customer journey while I'm working with the people on my list to launch the book and working with the people in that first leadership lab,
Mm.
the strategies were very practical. They weren't theoretical. We weren't going through I mean, I've worked with branding coaches in the past. So, and I've been through like 2 or 3 rebrands, but I've never felt as clear as I do now about what my brand is, how I can simplify it, tie it to my framework, not in a mechanical way, not in an artificial way, in a very deep, connective way with my clients.
I'm having an aha moment right now because I never use the term branding. Because I use the term strategy, and I want to like have the customer. We have to think about the customer's experience and what do they know and what are they looking for, and like, yeah, sometimes our messaging is such a mismatch because they don't, like, we're yelling about how they need surgery and they're like, I was just poking around looking for an old band-aid. Like, it's like really a clear mismatch in what we're proposing and what they're looking for. But yeah, I mean, I think maybe it worked because it wasn't an exercise. It
Yeah.
wasn't a branding exercise. It was like a very tangible. I think that it was a living moment. It wasn't like a theoretical, let's change the colors of my website and put some new photos up. It wasn't about that. It was like, as people are coming in through this book, what happens next? And do you recall, like, I always do a call to action at the launch party, and I don't recall what you did. I think it was related to having more business in the work that you were doing in companies. But you also did Leadership Lab. Do you remember like how you sort of brought people from the book launch into the next step?
Right. I scheduled another call to talk about my leadership lab and what that
Right.
is and how it related. And the call to action was to have people socialize what that was about, and pass along that they could come to my call and that they could potentially join the leadership lab.
Which is now a thing that is.
That's now a thing. I've run. Oh, I think I'm up to almost 200 people that I've run through the leadership lab in small groups of 4 to 8. Yeah.
Wow. In 2 years.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And like that's something that I always say, as when you're working in a book, you can't see around the corner to what's possible until you kind of get to and past that corner. You can look at what other
Yeah.
people are doing to give you some ideas and some hints. Um, it's hard for you to have made a plan like at the very beginning, but if you
Right.
like know what direction you want to go in, you'll be closer to that point in the map when you decide to like be, really earnestly focused on, like, for instance, a leadership lab.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that number. That's really cool.
Well, what's even icing on the cake for me is I'm 56. And so I am looking at how do I go into the next part of my career where I don't want to be reinventing courses every year. I mean, I've been in leadership development for 25 plus years. And so the number of classes I've invented is huge. This is the first class that has legs, that is going to stick for a long period of time. This is the first course that companies are now, oh, we need more people to go through this. We need the alumni version of this. We need a community around this so we can keep practicing and talking about this. This is sticking. And I've never experienced that. And I'm super excited to take this into the next 3 to 5 years as to what are those alumni experiences, and where do I go next with this, because it's getting traction.
I love this. The product market fit when it locks in place, it's so good, especially because we spend a lot of time where it's almost right, but it's not quite. It's like having a key that sort of sticks. You can maybe eventually make it unlock, but like it's really hard. And when it's smooth, it's so great. Now let's just talk about some other metrics, because I think the metric you were just describing is like the actual metric we should care about, which is having a bigger impact. All these people going through the leadership lab, all the referrals that are coming in more natural. Like people know how to refer you, and they're getting
Mhm.
support from your book. And then there's the book sales itself. I know right before we got on the call, you had looked up your total sales in the last couple of years. We're almost at the time we're recording this. We're we're just about at the 2-year mark for the book being out in the world. So how many book sales have happened?
399.
Okay, so we definitely have to sell one more just to like make it a nice round number. But okay, 399, and the average independent or not a traditionally published book, so anything that's not by one of the big publishers in New York, the average is 100 or less than 100 up to 250 books sold in a year. And the reason that's something that's notable is that that's an average, which includes, you know, exactly what to say by Phil M. Jones, which sold millions. So, so there's a handful of books in the not traditionally published list that are doing really, really, really just astronomically well, because 10,000 copies in a
Right.
lifetime is considered really good for those books. And so that the less than 100 up to 250 includes books that sell 2 copies, one for themselves and one for their mom. So so
Right.
399 in a couple of years, that's really cool. And that it keeps selling. And that's the other
Mhm.
thing. It's not just those sales happen in the first month because you did a gimmicky, 99 cents thing. It's because you pushed, and you also, I imagine, you bundle it in some way, like it's part of your program. You said your clients are reading it.
I actually don't bundle it, but I encourage people who take the lab to get it. And some will get it at the beginning, some will buy it at the end, some will get it when they're alums.
Mm.
It just depends on what their learning style is and what they're trying to do. I had one new to me organization. I met was introduced to the person that I'm now working with and coaching, and have come to coach his teams and do the lab within that organization. And it wasn't until he read my book and got super excited that we locked the deal in.
Mm.
So it was,
I
oh,
love it.
this sounds nice.
Book as closer.
Yeah.
Book as closer. That's awesome when that happens. All right, I know that you have the possibility of creating more. Like once you write a book, it feels like that impossible thing is no longer impossible. So one, if we look back at your first book, is there a part of the book that you wrote that is now feels like more important than when you wrote it? Like something that you're like, you sort of didn't fully value how that was going to hit. And you're like, this is the one people are talking about. This is the one I talk about the most. Or did you have it sort of all roll out the way you expected?
That's really interesting. I think the second step, hold the frame, like when you're
I always
dancing,
picture Dirty Dancing.
right? Holding the frame has been the most disruptive in the field. So to help people think about what traditionally is thought of as holding people accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels very top down, that word even. Holding the frame, people can understand that, oh, I'm going to hold the frame and dance. That does not feel top down.
Mm-hmm.
That does not feel heavy. It's not going to make me burn out. And that has shifted just the way clients that work with me feel about leadership in general. And that to me is worth all of it. Because in
Wow.
the beginning, I wanted to write this because people were burning out and feeling overwhelmed and going crazy. And I really feel like that hold the frame piece has been the biggest gift.
Is there a piece of the book that you felt really strongly about including, but you were like, I don't know how this is going to land with people? Kind of like, rocking the boat a little bit maybe, or being a little contrarian about some things. Leadership's been covered, but you have a really interesting take on it.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is I said you can do leadership in 4 steps. You don't need all these 2,700 million competencies that we have in all these organizations, and it doesn't need to be so academic. I mean, I have my doctorate. I know all the theories. I know all the things, but if I can boil this down to 4 steps and have a client work with me to look at their week and figure out which step they need more of or less of in order to empower other people and to get people to step up and step in and do the dancing with them so they don't burn out or micromanage, that's worth everything. Spending all this time that we do on all these competencies and formal checkoffs of these competencies, to me, feels like an exercise more than reality, and it's had a real big cost on leaders in the last decade.
And you purposely wrote this book as like a shorter book. I remember when you and I first met, you kept talking about how it was going to be this short book, small book, tiny book, 100-page book. I was like, how many words? And you were like, I don't know. I was like, but like the idea was that it was going to be, not the everything book and the kitchen sink, which I think sometimes people fall into that trap. And to write a second edition would require you making 10% of it different, either taking away, adding something 10%. And I'm curious if if you were to write the book today, or if you were to come up with a second edition, now that you've seen how it's like lived in the world, is there something you'd want to expand or change or maybe approach differently?
I actually think I would write a different book, but I would write a literal tiny book. Like this one's 110 pages, something like that. I think I'd write something that's maybe 30 little pages, but it's a desk reference book because I want to go after this idea of habits. And I think the habits in my leadership lab grow out of these 4 steps in my book. If I can create a tiny book that gives specific things people can do to hold the frame and to shift the idea of being accountable to holding the frame. And if they had 30 things they could do in 3 months over and over and over and over again.
You need a calendar. You need to sell either a wall calendar or one of those word a day, rip off one at a time calendars for the desk.
There you go.
That's so cool.
But that's what I want to do because I really, 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 what I'm finding is people will read it, which is great. They get the introduction to me. That's great. But the thing that I'm noticing that people need now, once they've been through the lab, once they've read the book, is they need the little reminder of how to think differently about these concepts that are so ingrained in us, and the old, metaphors and the old way of thinking about accountability is very ingrained in the culture. We need something to make it lighter that we can look at each and every day.
Mm. That'd be really fun to brainstorm with you. I'm
I
having
can't
all kinds
wait.
of
I
ideas.
am looking forward to working with you again on that one.
So
I will hire you so many times over because you always make me think and grow, and you help me expand my business.
I love this. I actually am imagining a brainstorming. So you're part of my Content and Connection Club, which is our weekly mastermind. And it's $100 a month. Contentandconnectionclub.com, and I don't talk about it very often on this podcast. I probably should more often. But it's a great little community of striving and thriving six-figure entrepreneurs. And I could picture me and you and Selena Pierman doing some really fun like brainstorming about what this could look like, because she's always really creative with all of her small books and her content and like materials. And I love having like a you know a space like that, a sandbox where we can try out
Yeah.
new ideas. But the book is not the finished product, right? It's like the book could then turn into other things,
Yes.
and the sky is kind of the limit. Like there's so many things we can create with it. But what I liked how you approached it is that you're not just creating a bookmark because you want to create a bookmark. You were trying to think like, what can I do to help remind people of these habits, of this conversation, and like to put that back into their body again when it's sort of like they go back into their default mode.
Yeah.
And so you're thinking about creating something that would serve a particular purpose, and that to me is what's exciting. It's not that we're going to sit around and like decide we're going to make desk blotters. Does people use desk blotters anyway?
These would be the things that my clients come back and say, "Ooh, this is the one. This is the thing that you said," or "This is the thing that mattered for me. This
Yeah.
is the thing." And I'm collecting all that feedback right now as I'm pulling people through the lab, and there's definitely a handful of things that are coming to the top.
Mm.
Those have to be in there. And then the question is, what are the remaining ones that would fill out the 30?
Well, have the readers of your book influenced the way you think about your topic? Has there been like a reverse education?
Every day. Every day. The conversations that get started from this, again, I have to check my mindset all the time because I am not for some people. Some people read my book and are like, this is not academic enough. This is not professional enough. Who is this chick with the doctorate writing, in this kind of voice? Or it's not comprehensive enough, or there's not enough, evidence or whatever.
Where's all the footnotes?
Right. And I have to check myself because that wasn't why I wrote it. And I love the conversations that I have with clients and with people who just read the book and send me a note or sign up for my newsletter, which is an extension of the book, and write back to me, "Oh my gosh, this made me think of this." And we start having these conversations about the dance
Mm-hmm.
and how, you know, as leaders and as entrepreneurs, we get ahead of ourselves. We try to plot it all out and plan it all out and get it all right. And it's a lot of wasted time, effort, and energy. Um, how can we make it easier on ourselves?
Mm-hmm. If we were checking in again a year from now, what do you hope will have grown, expanded in the work
Mm,
that you're doing? I mean, sounds like we already sort of went down that path a little bit, but is there anything on
yeah.
the horizon?
I think we've got the tiny book, the desktop book. And I think the other thing would be the alumni of the leadership lab, and getting that leadership lab into more companies. I think those would be the three things. How do I get that next couple of companies that are that small to mid-sized company that doesn't have that big HR team who could use some continuous
Yeah.
leadership, that's not prescriptive, but really can be a big bang for their buck.
I love this conversation so much. Great to check in with you and see, what's transpired since the book came out 2 years ago and how that's impacted the work that you're doing, the business that you're running. Your energy around this is just fire. I'm really like, you seem really great. I mean, it's fantastic to see because a lot of times people get really kind of tired of their book and tired of their topic. And you're like, no, 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 this leadership lab thing, this one's got legs. Like, I'm like, I'm so here for this. How can people find you and follow your work?
You can find me at www.authenticedge.com. I'm also on LinkedIn at Stacey with an EY, Larsen with an EN, and the number 1.
Fantastic. We're going to put all the links to your book, your LinkedIn, your website on the show notes at bizbookpubhub.com, which is where you'll find all of the show notes for all the past episodes, over 500 episodes that have been released. You can also go to bizbookpubhub.com to find a curated directory of about 24 experts who can support you wherever you are in your author journey, writing, editing, publishing, launching, and marketing, free virtual networking events, a blog, a Kindle flash sale, so many cool things. It's a ecosystem of resources for entrepreneurial authors. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're so happy to hear your success. Cheering you on, Stacey.
Thanks, Robbie. You're amazing.